databases, and from these conditional databases, we'll generate frequent item sets. So these are the steps in this algorithm. Now we'll see these steps with an example. So this is the transaction we had in the a priori algorithm also. The same example, we have 9 transactions and these are the transaction IDs and these are the item ID. So these are the items in each transaction. So instead of listing out the names of items, we are just using the item ID. So we have the item in each transaction and we are considering the support count as 2. That is, the items that satisfy the minimum support count 2 should be considered as frequent item sets. So the minimum support count is 2. So this is what we are given with the set of transactions and the minimum support count. Now from this transaction, we have to first step is to find the frequent one item. So what are the one item sets here? We have items I1, I2 up to I5. So taking these items one by one forms the one item set. So I1 is a set, I2 is a set, I3, I4 and I5. These are the item sets. And we have to find the support count. Support count is the number of transactions in which the item appears. So check in which all transactions the item I1 appears. So I1 is here in this first transaction 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So 6 is the support count of I1. Similarly, find the support count of all other items. So we'll get the support count like this. Among these, we have to retain only those item sets that satisfy minimum support count value of 2. Here we can find that all items have support count 2. So this set will be retained as such. So this is the L1 set that we got in a priori also. So this is the frequent one item set. So this is the first step in FP growth algorithm. Now we have to sort the item sets based on the descending order of support count. So I2 has the largest support count of 7. So I2 should be placed first, then I1, then I3, I4, and I5. So we have the item set in the order of, in the decreasing order of support count. So this is the second step, sorting the item set based on support count. Now we have to sort the items in the transaction also in this order. That is, first transaction we have I1, I2, I5. So among these items, I2 has the largest support count. So I2 should be listed first, then I1 with support count 6 and finally I5. So take each transaction at a time and sort the items in the transaction in descending order of support count. So we'll get, when sorting I1, I2, I5, we'll get I2, I1, I5. Now consider I2, I4. I2 has highest, then only I4 comes. So there is no change in I2 has highest, then only I4 comes. So there is no change in. Now consider I2, I3. Here also there is no change. Now if you consider I1, I2, I4, I2 has the largest support count, then I1, I4. So similarly, sort all the items, we'll get this sorted list. Here there are no changes in these items. Here we'll have change because I2 has the largest support count. So this will be sorted as I2, I1, I3, I5. Also the last one will be I2, I1, I3. Now we'll have the sorted list of items in each transaction. So this is the third step. And now once we have this sorted list, we can start building the tree. That is the FP tree or frequent pattern tree construction is the next step. So for constructing the tree, we have to first create the root of the tree, which is labeled as null. So first node will be the root node, which is labeled as null. And for each transaction, we have to create a branch. So consider the transaction in the order of descending or of support count and create a branch for each of these transactions. That is how we construct the tree. Now we'll see the tree construction. So we have a null node. This is the root node. Now the first step is take the first transaction I2, I1, I5. This is the sorted transaction list. That is the first the items in the first transaction. to take each node and create a new node. So first item is I2. So create a node for I2 and give its support count as 1 because we are adding this item for the first time. So set the item count as the support count as 1. Now next item is I1. So create a node as child of I2 and give support count as 1. So we have another node here, I1 with support count 1. Now the next item is I5. So again create a new node with support count 1 and this is node I5. So this is the tree we have after considering the first transaction. So we have a null node that is the root node and create nodes as child of the items in the transaction. Now consider the second transaction. Second transaction is I2, I4. We have to start from the root node. From root node, check if I2 is already there. Now we have I2 already in the previous step. So we can just increment the count of I2 to 2. So we don't have to create a new node because I2 is already there. Just increment the count as. Now next item is I4. We don't have I4 as child of I2. So create a new node for I4 and give its support count as 1. So I have shown the difference or the step that we do in each step in red color. So this is the change we have in the step 2. That is increment the count of I2 to 2 and create a new node for I4 and the support count is 1. In the third step, the items are I2 and I3. So start from the root node. We already have I2, so increment the count as 3. And the next node is I3. We don't have a child, I3 as child of I2. So create a new node and make its support count as 1. So this is what you have to do. If you already have a node as a child of the root node, you have to just increment the support node. Otherwise, create a new node. So whenever you create a new node, you have to create the node as child of the previous item. So I2 we have incremented the count and I3 should be the child of I2. Now in the fourth step, we have I2, I1, I4. So I2 count becomes 4. Then I1 is already a child of I4. So just increment the count as 2. Then I4 is not there as child of I1. So create a new node as I4. So you cannot go and increment the count here. I4 should be the child of this node. So create a new node I4, give its count as 1. Fifth transaction is I1, I3. So start from root node. We don't have a node I1. So create a new node I1. Support count is 1. Create a new node as child of I1. I3 with support count 1. Next step is I2, I3. So start from root node. I2 is already there. Increment the count. Then I3 is here. So increment its count. So likewise, we have to proceed. So in step 7, it is I1, I3. I1 is from root. Here we have I1, so increment is count. I3, again increment count. Then I2, I1, I3, I5 is the next transaction. So I2 is this node, increment the count as 6. Then I1, increment this count. Now I3 is not there. So create a new node for I3. Support count is 1. And create a new node for I5. Support count is again 1. The last transaction is I2, I1, I3. Again, start from the root node. I2 is here, so just increment the count. Then I1 is already here, increment the count. Then I3 is already here, increment the count. So this is how you build the frequent pattern tree. There are 9 steps, that is, there are 9 transactions, so we have 9 steps. In each step, we will be adding new nodes or incrementing the count of already existing nodes.
Hello, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry for interrupting, ma'am. Some students have requested you to speak up a bit,
Okay.
be a bit more louder.
Okay, okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So do I have to repeat this?
No, ma'am, that's fine. You can continue.
Okay. So at the end of the ninth step, you'll have a frequent pattern tree like this. So what we have to do is start from the root node, create a new node if the node is already not there. Otherwise, just increment the count of already existing node. So repeat this for all transactions. So since you have 9 transactions in this list, you have 9 steps. And at the last iteration, you will have this tree. So this is the tree we have. Now, if you check this tree, consider each node. Consider the support count of each node. The I2 support count is 7. You already have the support count table here. I2 has the largest support count of 7. So if you check the support count of this node, you can see that its count is 7. Now check I1. For I1, we have two nodes. This is one node and this is another node. So the support count here is 4. Here the support count is 2. So when you add them up, you get 6. So that is the support count in your table also. So you can verify whether the support counts of nodes add up to the counts here. Now consider I3. I3 we have 3 nodes. One is here, another one is here, and another one is here. All of them have support count 2. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 adds up to 6. That is the support count of 6. So there can be multiple nodes for a single item. But if you add up the support counts, you will get the support count that you already have in the table. Now, we'll also maintain a node link for traversing the tree. That is, I2 node is here. So this will be a link pointing to this I2 node. Similarly, I1, we have two nodes, here one node and here one node. So this will be pointing to this node and this chain in turn will be pointing to this node. So we'll be maintaining a chain of links for each of the item. So this is a link that we maintain as extra information for traversing the tree. Similarly, I3 we have three nodes. Here this is one node, this node and this node. So this is the chain of links maintained for I3. Similarly, we have links for all items in the item set. So this is the final FP tree we get with the nodes pointing to each of these items. Now from this frequent pattern tree, you have to create the conditional pattern base. Okay, so this is the final FP tree. Now we have to consider the item sets in reverse order. That is, we have to consider the last item or the item that has the lowest support count. Here we can consider either I4 or I5. I am considering I5 now. So take the item I5. Okay. Now we have to check where the I5 node appears in this tree. So there are two nodes named I5. This is one node and this is another node. So now we have to consider the branch or the path from which we reach I5. So from root node, how we can reach I5, we have to check the path. So this is one path, that is from root node, we can reach I2, then I1, then I5. This is one path. And for reaching this I5 node, we have another path, that is I2, I1, I3, and I5. Okay, so these nodes we have to add in the conditional pattern base. So I2 and I1 are the prefix nodes in the path from root to I5. That is, for reaching I5, we have to travel through I2, I1 and then reach I5. So we can add I2 and I1 in the conditional pattern base. So add I2, I1 and the support count of I1 you have to write here. So the support count is 1. So put it here. Now the second path is I2, I1, I3, I5. So the prefix nodes are I2, I1 and I3. So I2, I1, I3 and the support count of I5 here is 1. So this is how you create the conditional pattern base. That is, locate the nodes and find the prefix path or the path of that node from the root node and add those nodes in the conditional pattern base. So for I5 we have two paths. and add those nodes, and the support count of I5 should be recorded. This is how we get a conditional pattern base. Now we have to create the conditional FP tree. For this, consider each item one at a time. So here I2, I1, we have support count as 1. That means the support count of I2 is 1 and I1 is 1. Here also we have I2, I1, I3 support count as 1. That means the support count of I2, I1 and I3 are 1. Now we have to take each item at a time and calculate the total count. So I2 appears in these two sets. So the support count, we can add this 1 and 1. So the support count becomes 2. Similarly, I1 appears in this set and also in this set. So support count becomes 2. Now, if we consider I3, I3 appears only in this set and its support count is 1. So we have taken the example as minimum support count as 2. But here we have support count as 1. So we don't have to take this item. So only I2 and I1 are taken because they only satisfy minimum support count. I3 is lower than the minimum support count. It has count as 1. So we'll be discarding this. So this is the conditional FP tree of this item that we generate from this conditional pattern base. Just take the items and add their support counts. That is what you do here. Now we have to generate frequent patterns from this conditional FP tree. That is, you have to take join of these items with the item I5. So I2, I5 will be one join. The support count is 2. Now I1, I5 is the second set joining I1 and I5. Support count is 2. Now we can join these sets I1, I2, I5. The support count is 2. So here, since I2 and I1 had the same support count 2, we wrote the support count as 2 here. Otherwise, we have to write the minimum support count among these two. If we had I2 as 4 and I1 as 2, the support count of I2, I1, I5 will be 2. So take the minimum support count of these and record it as the support count for this frequent pattern. So this is how we generate frequent patterns. So take the join of the sets in the FP tree with the item. So there are two items, I2 and I1. So the first set will be I2, I5, second set will be I1, I5, and then join of these sets, that is I2, I1, I5, and give the support count. Now consider the second set, I4. Now locate where I4 is. The node I4 is. So here there are two nodes with labels I4. This is one node and this is another node. So now take the path from root to reach this node. We have two paths. First path is I2, I1, I4. So the prefix nodes are I2, I1. So I2, I1, and the support count of I4 is 1. The second path is from I2 you can reach I4. So there is only one node, that is I2, and the support count of I4 is 1. So I2 support count is 1. Now generate the conditional FP tree, that is take the total count of these items. I2 here count is 1, here also I2 count is 1. So add them up, we get the count as 2. Now I1 is there in only one set and its support count is 1. So we have to discard it because it is below the minimum support count 2. So we'll have only one set. Now take join of this set with I4. I2, I4, support count is 2. Now consider the third transaction, I3. So for I3, we have three nodes, one node here, and another node here. So now consider each of these paths. First path is I2, I1, I3. So this is one path. So I2, I1, and support count here is the support count of I3, that is 2. Now the another path is I2, I3. So I2 and support count of I3 is 2. Now there is another path, this path, that is I1, I3. So the support count is I1 and the support count of I3 is 2. Now at this point, there is one change that we haven't seen in the previous step. Now we have to take the count of, add the count of these sets. So I2 is here in both these sets. So we can add them up. That is, count becomes 2. But when you take I1, you cannot add these two and make it 4. This is because this I1 is in one path, that is left path, and this I1 is in another path. So we have to retain them separately. So this will be in one set and this I1 will be in another set. So this condition did not occur before in the previous two steps. So this is because the branches were different in these paths. So you have to retain I1 as 2 here separately and this I1 as 2 here separately. So since all of them satisfy minimum support count, these can be added in the conditional FP tree. So you cannot add this I1 and this I1 and make it 4 here. That is a point that you have to note here. And from this, we have to again take join with I3. So the first join will be I2, I3. The support count is 4. The second set we have to add is I1, I3. The support count is 2. Let it be 2 there. Then I1, I3. The support count is 2. Now here we have again I1, I2. So at this point, I1, I3, we can make the support count as 4. So at this point, we can make it 4, not here. So here there are two sets with support count I1. Both have support count I1 as with 2 as support count. So you can join as I1, I3 separately. So you get two sets I1, I3. So you can add them up and give support count as 4 here. Okay. So not at this point, but when you generate frequent pattern, you can add the support count. So the support count of I1, I3 becomes 4. Now we have to join these sets. So I1, I2, I3, and the support count is not 4. You have to check this set. You have to take the minimum support count from these sets. So I2 has support count 2 and I4 has 2. So the minimum is 2. That is the support count that you have to record here. That is the support count of I1, I2, I3 occurring together is 2. You cannot take the support count here because I2, I3 appears in 4 transactions. I1, I3 appears in 4 transactions. But that doesn't mean that I1, I2, I3 will appear in 4 transactions. So you have to take only the minimum value from here. That is the support count is 2. So this is another point that you have to note in the third step. Now consider the transaction I1. So I1, we have just one node. We have one node here and another node here. So if you consider this node, there is no prefix node here. It is a direct node from root, so you don't have any prefix node here. But in this path, you have a node I2 here, then I4. So I2 can be added to the conditional pattern base. And the support count of I1 is 4 that you have to record here. Now, this can be retained as such because it is above the minimum support count of 2. Now, take join of these sets I2, I1, the support count is 4. Now, take the next transaction, that is the last one, that is I2. If you consider I2, there is one node, only one node labeled I2. That is the child of this root node. So, you don't have any prefix node. That is why we have not considered it here. So we have considered all items in the reverse order and found out the prefix nodes in the path from root and recorded the conditional pattern base. From that, we will generate the conditional FP tree and the frequent pattern generator. So this is the only case where we had two branches. That is the case of I3. So I3, we had two different branches, one in the right node and another in the left subtree. So that is why we have drawn this conditional FP tree separately. So this is the conditional FP tree for I3. For all other nodes, we have only single path, either in left or right. So this is how frequent patterns are generated. So this is the final output of the FP growth algorithm. That is, these are the item sets that frequently appear together. That is I2 and I5 with support count 2, I1, I5 support count 2. These are the two frequent item sets. This is the frequent 3 item set. Similarly, we have one more frequent 3 item set and all others are frequent 2 item set. So this is the same output that we got in a priori also, but with much lesser computational cost.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Sorry for the interruption. This is a short reminder to the attendees. You can post your questions and doubts in the question and answer box available in your screen. Just now, we have got a question from Sumita Nair. Ma'am, can you once again explain how did I2, I1, I3 come in I3 row?
Okay. So I3, we have three nodes I3, right? This is one node, this is another node, and this is another node. Okay. So take each branch one by one. So first branch is this path, that is I2, I1. We can reach from root through I2, I1 and reach I3. So this is one path. So I2, I1 I have recorded. Sorry. And the support count is 2. Now second one is this path. So I2 is the only node, I2. The support count of I3 here is 2. Now this is the third path, that is I1, I3. So there is only one node, I1. The support count is 2. This. Now since these paths are in different branches, support count, so I2 support count will be, you can add these two counts, that is, so I2, I1, the support count 2 means that I2's count is 2 and I1's count is also 2. Now we have another set with I2 as count 2, so we can add them together and I2 count becomes 4. But when you consider I1, so one I1 is in the left branch and another I1 is in right branch. So we have to maintain them separately. So this I1 count will be kept as such here and this set will be kept as separate set. That is why we have two different sets. But while joining this, but while making the frequent patterns, we have to add them up. That is, join these sets with I3. So I2, I3 will be one set with support count 4. Then I1, I3 will be one set, support count is 2. Again I1, I2, I1 is here and join with I3. So I1, I3, support count is 2. So since we have two sets, I1, I2, sorry, I1, I3 with support count 2, we can add them up and make it 4 here. So these are the two sets that we get here. And then we have to join these two sets. So I1, I2, I3, and the support count is again 2, not 4, because we have to take the minimum support count from this set. So I2 has a count of 4 and I1 has support count of 2. So we can take only the minimum value because the meaning, what is the meaning of this? I2 and I3 occurs together in 4 transactions and I1 and I3 occurs together in 4 transactions, right? But this doesn't mean that if all of them appear together, the support count is 4. I1, I2, I3, because support count of I1 here is only 2, we have only 2 as the count here. That is the support count of I1, I2, I3 appearing together is only 2. So this is a change in this step. If you have different paths, you have to put the item count separately and add these when you join them with I3. And you can add them up here. Also, when you consider the support count of each joined items, you have to take the minimum support count from these counts. Hope this is clear now. Okay.
Okay, you may continue,
Can I
ma'am.
continue? Okay. So this is how, so this is the final patterns we get. We'll have 2 frequent item sets and 3 frequent item sets. So this is the same output that we get in a priori also, but we haven't generated so many candidates. We have built one tree and we have considered the path of each item and we have generated conditional FP tree and found out the frequent item sets in the final step. So this count means that I2 and I5 appears together in 2 I1 and I5 appears together in two transactions and so on. So after this step, we can generate strong association rules. This is same that we did in a priori also, so I am not explaining that. So for generating association rules, you have to take the confidence also. That is, consider the transactions that appear together and take their counts from set of transactions, and those that satisfy the minimum support count are said to be strong rules. So that is the same step that we did in a priori also. The second step has no relation with the frequent pattern set generation. So once we have the frequent item sets, the rule generation step is the same. So that I am not discussing here. Now let us see the algorithm now. So the input is the transaction, set of transactions and the minimum support count. So the support count here we considered was 2. So that should be given as input. And the output will be the frequent patterns. And that is the all set of frequent patterns, frequent 2 item sets as well as frequent 3 item sets. We did not had candidate 4 item set in a priori also. So here also we don't have 4 item set. So if we had 4 item set, that will also be generated. So the complete set of frequent patterns is the output of this algorithm. So first step is we have to create the FP tree. So for creating FP tree, we have to scan the transaction database and collect the frequent item sets, then the support counts, then sort the support count in descending order, and sort the transactions also in descending order. That is, the items in the transactions should also be sorted in the descending order. That is what we do in the first step. And create the FP tree. So first create the root node with label as null, then start adding nodes. That is, the items will be created as nodes. So if you have an item as a node, as child of root node, you can just increment the count of the node. That is the support count. Otherwise, you have to create a new node. So there can be more than one node for a single item. That is what that we have seen in the tree creation. So this is the tree creation step. And after the tree creation, we have to mine patterns from the tree. So that is the procedure FP growth. So this is where we we find the conditional pattern base and find the conditional pattern tree and add the items that have the minimum support count. So if we have only a single path, we can generate the combination by taking the minimum support count. If there are multiple paths, we have to take each of them separately and maintain the support count separately and call FP growth in the tree that is being generated. So this occurred in only one case, that is in case of I3. Here we have 2 paths. So here we have to call FP growth again, and that is why we had maintained I1 as 2 nodes separately. So this is the FP growth algorithm that has that does the condition, that generates the conditional pattern base, and from the conditional pattern base we'll get the conditional that is the item sets that have the minimum support count. So this is the algorithm, and this is all about association rule mining. We have 2 algorithms, a priori algorithm and FP growth algorithm. So a priori algorithm is computationally expensive because it generates large number of candidate sets. Also, it has to scan the database each time for incrementing the count of item to find the support count. So these 2 steps make it computationally expensive. That is why FP growth has been introduced. So it builds a frequent pattern tree. So a tree structure is built, and node links are also maintained for easy traversal. And from this tree, we can generate frequent patterns, frequent item sets without much computational cost. But still, there are many approaches to improve the efficiency of a priori algorithm. That is, we can reduce the cost of candidate generation and this repeated scanning. There have been several approaches, and hashing, sampling, etc. are also there. That is, we can maintain a hash table for an item set, or we can take a sample. If you have a very large data set, instead of considering all the transactions, you can take a sample of the data set so that the candidate generation process will be reduced. So apart from this, there are many approaches to improve the efficiency of a priori that you can look into. That is out of scope of your syllabus. You have to learn the basic a priori only. So the basic a priori suffers from this drawback of high computational cost, and FP tree is efficient and scalable even in case of large data set. So this is all about association rule mining. So if you have any queries, you can ask now. Otherwise, we can go to the next topic. We'll just start the next topic after taking the questions.
Hello.
Yes.
Aaron has asked, can you repeat the frequent pattern generated of I3 once more?
I3, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we generate the frequent pattern? That is a conditional base. You have to locate the node, right? So locate the node I3. So there are 3 nodes labeled I3. This is one node, this is another node, and this is the third node. Okay, so consider each of the paths separately. So this is one path, that is from root node I2, I1, then I3. So I2, I1 are the prefix nodes, and the support count is 2. That is, the support count of 2 is what you have to write here. So the support count is 2. The second path is this path. That is from root node I2, then I3. So there is only one prefix node, that is I2. So this is the second set. The third set is from root node I1, I3. So this is a different branch from root. The other paths were in the left subtree only. You reached I2, then you can reach I3. You can reach I2, then I1, then I3. But this is a different path. So this is the right subtree of this root node. That is I1, then I3. So I1, we can record it here. The support count is 2. So this is how you write the prefix nodes. So this is same. There is no difference in writing this. Just write the prefix paths of how many paths are there. You can just write down the prefix nodes in the path and the support count of the node I3 here. Hope this is clear. And when writing down the conditional FP tree, you have to normally what you do is you will add up the nodes and write the count here. So I2 is there in this set and also in this set. So you can add the support counts as 2 plus 2, 4, right? But when you consider I1, so one I1 is in this left subtree and another I1 is in right subtree. So you cannot add them up. So you have to maintain them separately. So this I1 is in the left path. That is this is the node. So its count is 2. And this is in the right path. Its count is 2 written here. And note that the support count that we write here is the support count of the I3 node. Okay. So that is why we have 2 nodes here. I1 with support count 2. And this is another I1 with support count 2. You cannot add them together because they are in different branches. Okay. And while taking, now with this conditional FP tree, we have to join it with the items. So take each one at a time, I2, I3, join it. The count is 4. Now second item is I1, I3. The support count is 2. Okay. Now we have another I1, I3 here. The support count is also 2. At this point, you can add them up and make it 4. So that is why we have count here. There are 2 I1 items. The support count is 2. You can add them up here and join with I3. That is why I1, I3 has support count here 4. Now join these two. That is the items in these sets together. That is I1, I2, I3. That you can write in any order. That doesn't matter. So I2, I3 and I1, I3. You can write it I2, I1, I3 or I1, I2, I3. And the support count is 2 because when you see here, the support count is 2. You have to take whatever is the minimum value here should be taken as the support count. Okay. So here that is why we maintained I2 separately here. If we combined I4 here, this count would have become 4. But that will give you wrong result. because these were from different branches. So we maintain them separately here, but when we join here, we can take them as together. So you can verify this with the transaction table also. I'll show you the transaction table. This will become clear. So when you join I1, I2, I3 here, take the minimum value, that is 2, which is the support count. So let us go back to the table and make this clear. So consider this is the example. So we are looking for the pattern I2, I1, I2, I3, okay? So consider I1, I2, I3. So this I1, I2, I3 appears only in 2 transactions, right? Not in 4. But I2 and I3, there are many, I2 and I3 also is there in 1, 2, 3 and 4. So the support count of I2, I3 is 4. Also I1, I3 is also 4. I1, I3 is also 1, 2, 3, 4. But the support count of I1, I2, I3 is just 2. Okay. That is why we have considered this I1 separately. Otherwise, you would have got a support count as 4. But if you see in the example itself, you will understand that the support count of I1, I2, I3 is just 2 and not 4. So the support count of I2, I3 is 4 and I1, I3 is 4. But that doesn't mean that I1, I2, I3 is 4. So you have to take the minimum of the count in count that you record here. The minimum value is 2. That is why you have the support count 2. Is it clear? So if you didn't understand, it will the entire thing you will get it wrong here. You will write up 4 here. That is the wrong thing because you don't have 4 transactions in which I1, I2, I3 appears together. So be careful about this point. So only in I3 set we have this difference. That is, we have whenever you have different parts, even for the same item set, even for the same item, keep them separately when you create the conditional FP tree. And when you create the pattern set, you can add them up. Also, when you generate or join the sets, you have to look into these counts and take only the minimum value. The previous step, all the sets, all the support counts were the same. That is why there was no confusion there. But here, when we see the support count of I2 is 4, but I1 is 2. So you have to take the minimum value as 2. Then only you will get the support count right. We can verify with the support count in the question also. After generating these items, you can go manually and check in this set the support counts. That is I1 and I2 appearing together. What is the count? You can check that and verify if you have done correctly. Is it clear now?
I hope it's clear, ma'am. We can continue.
Okay. This is all about association rule mining. So from exam point of view, you will be asked, you will be given a set of transactions and the minimum support count will be given, also the minimum confidence threshold. So either you will be asked to generate only the frequent item sets using a priori or FP growth. In that case, you have to generate only these steps, these sets. So if you are asked to generate the strong association rules, you have to consider confidence threshold also and find out the confidence of each rule and find the strong rules. So that is the last step in association rule mining. So the finding the strong association rules is the same in a priori and FP growth also. So that's why I didn't discuss it here. So this is all you have about association rule mining. The basic concepts, that is item set, confidence, support, and these 2 algorithms and their working. Now we'll start the next topic, that is clustering. So again, clustering is also another unsupervised learning task. So clustering means we are given a set of data items. We have to group them into clusters or groups. That is, we don't have any labels. We are just given some data points. Consider the 2-dimensional data points here. So we can visually inspect that these points could be in one cluster, these 2 points in another cluster, and these will be in another cluster. So we don't have any labels as in classification. We are just given some data points. We have to group them based on similarity. So mostly we do this based on the distance. So the property that we have to look into is the distance among the points belonging to a cluster should be minimized. That is, these points should be similar to each other. Also, the points belonging to this cluster should be similar to each other, and these points should be similar to each other. That is, intra-cluster distance should be minimized. That is, the distance among points belonging to a cluster should be minimized, and the inter-cluster distance, that is, the point in this cluster and this cluster should be different. That is, the distance should be maximized. So inter-cluster distance should be maximized so that these points are distinct from these points and these points. So the objective of clustering is to minimize the intra-cluster distance and maximize the inter-cluster distance. So points belonging to a cluster will be similar to each other, and they will be dissimilar from points of another cluster. Okay, so this is what clustering does. So here we'll be defining data based on distances, and we don't have any label associated with the data set. That is why it is said to be unsupervised machine learning task. So we have to find hidden patterns or find groups from only on the basis of the data points, and we are not given any labels. That is what clustering means. So now let us look into the applications of clustering. So one application is in business intelligence, we can group customers. That is, the customers that belong that have similar buying patterns or similar characteristics can be grouped together. So customer segmentation is one application. So if you have identified characteristics of customers and group them into distinct groups, you can have personalized or you can give suggestions to those customer segments. So this helps to improve business in different ways by giving suggestions and all. This is one case. And also we can group projects based on similarities. Projects that have similar characteristics can be grouped into clusters. So this makes the project management easy task. So these are the applications in business intelligence, that is grouping customers based on their characteristics and grouping projects based on similarity. And in image processing, we can have image segmentation. Suppose we have numerous images of brain or something like that, liver images. We can segment the tumorous portions by using clustering. So segmenting the tumorous region from the rest of the region. So the points in the tumorous region will be different from the rest of the region. So image segmentation help you to dissect those portions that are tumorous. That is by analyzing the images of tumors. Also, when you consider handwritten character recognition systems. So when you write characters or digits, different people write differently, right? So somebody will be writing slowly, somebody will be writing straight or in cursive. So there can be different patterns for the same letter. So for recognizing a letter by analyzing the handwritten characters is another application of clustering. You can group the similar letters and map them to a class called, say, A, capital A. So different people write A, capital A differently, so they can be grouped together and you can identify them as capital A. This is one application. And in web search, we can organize the search results. When you give search query, you get a lot of results. So based on similarity, they can be grouped, and most relevant queries can be, the most relevant search results can be grouped. This is one thing that you can do. And also you can cluster documents into topics. So documents can be collected and they can be clustered and organized into topics. These are the applications in web. And when it comes to biology, we have different plants, species, animal species and all. So given their characteristics, we can group them into some phylum or species or subspecies. We can have a hierarchical organization. That's one thing. And you can also categorize genes. That is, genes that have similar functions can be grouped together. The last application is outline.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll stop in 2 minutes. I'll wind up in 2 minutes.
Interrupting, ma'am. We have just 5 minutes. Okay.
Okay. So outlier detection means outliers are points that do not belong to any cluster. So there can be chance of noise in a cluster. So we have to identify them and remove them. So outliers are noises or points that are significantly different from other points in the cluster. So when we do clustering, there can be significantly different points. They have to be identified. That is called outlier detection. So you can detect credit card fraud. That is, if somebody has stolen your credit card, you may have a abnormal withdrawal pattern. So that can be identified as a outlier, and this can be detected. That is called outlier detection. So these are the applications of clustering in different domains. So we'll continue with the other concepts of clustering and other types of clustering in next session. So if you have any doubts regarding this, you can ask now, right now.
So attendees, this is your last chance to clear your doubts. If you have any doubts, you can post it in the box.
Vandana, I think the voice is breaking.
Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, are there any questions?
Ma'am, Anandu has asked difference between noise and outlier.
Noise and outlier are the same. The outlier is something that lies out. So if you do clustering, there are some points that may be significantly different from the rest of the points. So they should be identified as noise or outlier.
Okay, that's all the question there is. So, shall we wind up, ma'am?
Yeah, we can remind.
Okay, so thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful session. I hope it was indeed very enriching for the attendees as well. So, we're looking forward coming classes.
Okay.
So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Vandana. Thank you.
All.